Charging is a specialist in fleet electrification, and I'm going to talk to you about the journey that we've been going on for the last few months. So my title today is Charging with Confidence, Ensuring Business Continuity for Business Fleets. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but fundamentally, the way we see EV infrastructure is different to other companies. We see EV infrastructure as business critical infrastructure. If vehicles can't charge, then businesses can't do their business. So for us, it's really vital that we've built an ecosystem of software and platform and hardware that delivers this. So I'm going to give a quick journey overview. How have we got here today? What's been my role in it? What have we done as a company? How the twists and turns of our history, where we've gone. Then going to talk to you about what we offer. Why is our offering different? Why is our offering unique? What do we offer that's different? What are the problems we're trying to solve for our customers? And that's really important. It's very easy to get lost in sort of like CPO, MSP, protocol, 15.11.8, blah, blah, blah. But actually, it's the customer problem we're trying to solve, and that's really important. And then finally, sort of like, what's our view moving forward? And then there'll be a chance for questions at the end. So, what is EO all about? What is our mission? Well, our purpose is to accelerate the transition to zero carbon fleets. Now that can be last mile delivery, that can be bus, that can be electric fleets, that can be return to home fleets, that can be workplace charging fleets. But fundamentally, we see fleets, for a number of reasons, being the key driver towards net zero, reducing carbon emissions, enabling companies to hit their net zero goals and their carbon emission ambitions. And so fleets are a real enabler and a trendsetter for the rest of the marketplace. So it's different to public, it's different to domestic, but fleet is where we're focused on. So a little bit about EO. So we are fundamentally a fleet charging company, and over the last 10 years, we've enabled the electrification of a number of key customers. We've worked with Amazon, DHL, UPS. We've worked across the UK, Europe, USA. We're private equity backed. But fundamentally, at the top level figures, we've got over 10,000 chargers under management. We've delivered 200 construction projects, so we've electrified 200 plus depots. And we achieve a 99.5% reliability uptime. So the key metrics for our customers is like when they arrive, when the driver arrives on site and they plug in, is the vehicle going to charge? That's metric number one. Second metric, when they unplug, is that vehicle going to be fully charged? Can they do their business? Fundamentally, businesses, they don't really care about electrification. What they care about are moving people from A to B or moving boxes from A to B. That's their business. That's what they're specialists in. And what we are finding is that they see electrification of their fleet as an enabler for that. So yes, there are divisions within the company fundamentally focused on electrification, and those are the people we work with. But at a top level, the electrification is an enabler for their business. And if that enabler breaks, then they can't do their business. And that is really bad news for their customers. So we've built a platform approach, we've built a number of different things, brought a number of different systems together to enable fleets to deliver that promise of delivering people from A to B or chargers from A to B. So we've got we're specialists in the market. We've got a unique proposition which we call our charge assurance proposition, which I'll unpack in a minute. It's built around a full stack ranging from the start of the journey to the end of the journey. And then it's all based around future standards. We're very much open-based standards, so OCPP, 15.11.8, OCPI. We started off down the proprietary protocol route. We had some success, but as in all industries, proprietary interfaces will get you only so far. You have to go to an open standards, interoperability approach in order to succeed. And then finally, we've evolved our business offering. We've got a number of different ways in which the customers can pay for this. We realize this is expensive, and so I'll begin to unpack that as well. So the history. So 10 years ago we started. We were a hardware manufacturer. We did basic domestic AC charging stations, 7 kilowatt, 32 amps, 61851 standard. We did three-phase. We then added some basic intelligence into that to create our first fleet charger. That then became the basis of the largest rollout within the UK. So 2018, we installed across New Cargo 63 charging stations. It was the largest by one. So we beat Podpoint by, they had 62, we had 63. So there was a big bidding war between the two companies back then. But that was a great learner. This is how do fleets operate? How do the drivers behave? How can they plug in? What's reliability? What does that look like? So that was a key enabler. From that, we began to evolve our hardware platforms. So we developed the Genius 2 and the Mini Pro 3. These were our first OCPP-based charging stations. We put them through the full 61851 certification. So we got them certified by BSI, which is the equivalent of DECRA or TUV. And we were one of the first in the UK to achieve that full certification. Because customers, we don't want to mark our own homework. We want to give our products to other people to say, right, this is a good product. This has been tested. This has been approved. And we do that with all of our protocols, with our software as well. Has it been pen tested? Has it been certified? Is it a good implementation? And that fundamental mindset of building something, getting someone else to check it, that's what we build into the stack moving forward. And from there, we've had a number of significant improvements. We've launched our significant milestones. We've launched our bus market and our truck services. We've entered into the USA and got some school bus wins. We've brought in some new investment and financing strategies. We've had some new management. And then we're beginning this year to launch our new infrastructure as a service. So throughout it all, we've basically transitioned from a hardware manufacturer, learning how charging works, building that into a software ecosystem, and then delivering that for our key customers. So we've had some success. We've done UK, Europe. We've got some significant customers in DHL, FedEx, UPS. In the UK, we've got Tesco's, Sainsbury's, Amazon. We've got moved into the bus market. We've got we've been successful in electrifying over 50% of the UK, of the London bus market. And then we've got a number of distributed fleet partners as well, such as DAF. We work with Mercedes, Kempower, and Aviva. And so we've got a number of different styles of projects and customers across the globe, whether it's UK, whether it's Europe, Nordics, or America. So we've had quite a lot of experience, and we've got the scars on our backs to prove it. It's not easy, but what we've been able to prove is it is possible. And from that, we've been able to have some success and build that out to a wider number of customers. So what actually is our offering? You've heard me talk about charge assurance, platform, etc. So let me now try and talk about the system that we involve. Now, we live in a complex world. Now, I'd like your participation here at the moment, please. I'd like to have a show of hands. How many of you here are involved in the infrastructure, sort of the CPO, the MSP, the payment space? Who raise your hands if you're in that place? Thank you, Dan. What if you're a customer? What if you're a fleet operator? Have we got any sort of customers who are interested in fleets? Okay, maybe one or two. But really, what we're focused in, it's these people here. It's the drivers. It's the customers. That's what we're focused on. And everything to the right, that's our problem. That's what we've got to solve. We've got to work out, we've got to ensure that the van talks to the charging station. Okay, 61851, that's pretty easy. 15118, oh, that's the next layer up. Okay, 15118-20, oh, it's getting really complex. How does the charging station talk to CPO? Is it OCPP? Is it proprietary? Is it OCP 2.0? Which flavor? What config keys do they support? What if you throw in a payment terminal? How does the charging station talk to the payment terminal? How does the CPO enable the payment services with the payment provider? How do we integrate 15118? How do we integrate with Hubject? What about if you've got a mobility provider? If you want to do roaming, how do you enable all of that? And then what about the vehicles? Maybe you've got telematics in there. And how does all this ecosystem hang together? And this is really complex. This is very easy to get wrong. we've integrated with 70 plus charging stations. We've integrated with dozens of different vehicle brands. We've integrated with a number of grid operators, payment providers. All of them are different. All of them have slightly different quirks, slightly different OCPP implementations, and we're the ones who have to handle it, because at the end of the day, the customer, they don't care. They just want to plug in and charge, and that's the problem we're trying to solve. But when I talk about customers, when we do public charging, it's very, it's you, it's me. I've got my car, I plug in, and I'm the one paying, so there's only one customer. What we see in the fleet space is many customers. So you've got the driver. They're the main interface. They're the ones who have to plug in and drive away, or unplug and drive away. But they're just one persona. What about the fleet manager? They're responsible for all of their vehicles across the entire estates. They might have a dozen sites across one country. They're responsible for all of the vehicles. How do they manage that? How do they manage the drivers, interface with those drivers? You've then got site owners. So you've got one guy in charge of one depot who's got a number of different vehicles and drivers appearing. How do they interface with the system? Because what happens if the electricity goes down? How do they respond? And then you've also got the other really key customer, the finance team. How do they engage with us? How do we prove that they're getting value from their investment? How do we ensure that they are getting the payments from their services? Because with a fleet environment, let's say we've got a depot, you've got 100 chargers. You might have 5 out front that are for staff charging. You might have, so therefore they might be classed as public charging. How do the drivers or the staff members pay for that? Do they pay for a credit card? Do they go for an MSP? You then might have in the depot itself, you might have 20 chargers, 15 chargers for third parties. So a delivery company, for example, might outsource some of their driving. So they've got third parties. How do they ensure that they are paying for the electricity that they use on site? How do the customer ensure that they're authorized correctly, that the right people are charging the right charges? And then you've got the other sort of 80 chargers set up for the main customer fleet drivers. How do we ensure that those customers are separated and they're authorized and they're managed correctly? So every customer is different. They've got a number of different sites, they've got different users on sites, they've got different personas within the company. And that's what we have to manage. And we have to ensure that everything on the right here, that works. And that's our problem, so that these guys over here, they can just go about their business of moving boxes from A to B or moving people from A to B. And this is the challenge that we often face. And we see this within our customers, that they don't understand this, and they're looking for people who do understand it to help them on that journey. So a journey is really critical for each customer. And what we see is every customer go through an evolution. Now, at the start, they go, right, okay, let's take a large supermarket chain. They want to electrify their delivery vans. So therefore, let's do a trial. Right, we need some chargers. Let's get some chargers in the ground. So we work with the customer to, right, let's install a couple of chargers and get them connected. And so how do we get the grid connection? Where do we put them? Where's the best access? How do we lay out the bays? How do we construct the site so that they can run this trial? We then get it connected to our software back office. And then they can begin to explore, get the reports and get the data. And we've seen one customer, they spend 2 years trialing 2 vehicles. And then beyond that, then they rolled out massively. So once they've got their chargers in the ground, they need to start using them. And that's where our charge assurance package kicks in. So our charge assurance package is really a sort of a combination of software and service, which I'll explain in a minute, that allows us to hit the 99.5% uptime. And beyond, and once we've enabled them onto the charge assurance platform, once we've onboarded them, then they get the guarantee that when they plug in, it's going to work. And we can give them the reports, we can give them the data, we can contact them when there are issues, we can get installers on site to solve problems. And that gives them the confidence that this thing will work. Then they go around the next phase of going, great, this is working. This is exactly what I need. Let's put more chargers in. So therefore, they suddenly go, right, let's buy a whole load more trucks, let's get more chargers. And then they need to hit the limit of their site. And then they get into load management. And depending what the load management is, we may have to set a static limit, so all the chargers at a fixed limit. They might have conveyor belts or robots or heavy machinery on site. So the site load goes up and down during the day. Therefore, we have to enable dynamic metering. We have on-site physical devices measuring the consumption so we can distribute the energy to the different chargers at the right moment. And then we can do timing schedules. Maybe they don't want to charge during certain part of the days. So we've got a flexible energy management system and service that allows the customer to tailor it to their own needs. And then this is where the finance people come in. They suddenly walk around the site and they go, my buses, they're not here, they're out. I've got all this infrastructure that I've paid for, mega expensive, but it's not being used. Why not? And so they go, well, how can we get other people to use it for us? How can we monetize these assets? And so therefore, people start going, right, well, let's strike up a business relationship with our partners next door. They can use it during the day, we'll use it during the night. Who pays for it? Who's authorized? So there's a lot of complexity around that. And then that enables us to, the finance team to go, brilliant, I'm getting a good return on my investment now because everyone's using it and it's fully utilized. And then finally, the finance guy, they get their bills at the end of the month and they suddenly go, wow, I'm an industrial user of electricity. This is expensive. Certainly in the bus market, they suddenly go from using oil and petrol and diesel to suddenly consuming megawatts of power, and that's expensive. So they then go, well, how can we reduce this? So therefore, we have to look at the grid services or smart charging. We look at the customer's fleet size, we look at their chargers, and we go, okay, we think we can do some smart charging with you. You don't always have to hit 100% within 3 hours of plug-in. This vehicle, if we integrate with route planning, you only need 80% tomorrow. You only need, so therefore we're going to charge you at this time. So we're going to move you. We're going to respond to grid signals. We're going to deploy smart charging so we can optimize your assets so that they charge at the cheapest possible time. And it becomes a challenge because things like load management, grid optimization, what that traditionally does, that lowers the charging rate or it moves the charging rate later to a cheaper time period. But then that gets us into the period of vehicle readiness. If the vehicle needs to go at 6 o'clock in the morning and we've delayed the charging, if there's a problem, then we've reduced the time for us to allow us to respond. And so therefore, we've got to really balance grid optimization against vehicle readiness. And every customer is going to be different. Some customers will have loads of capacity and flexibility, others won't. And so we have to take every customer through a unique journey through our stack to ensure that they are able to deliver their people and the parcels the next day. So, we have a standard framework, but it's different for every customer. So the charge assurance piece is really the foundation of that. But what does that actually mean? So it's really two parts. So we've broken the company down into two stages. The first part is what we call our projects business. And this is the infrastructure. Let's work with our customer. Let's design your site. Let's design your depot. And let's make sure that we can get the charging stations installed and future-proofed for future evolutions. So initially they may do multiple phases. Initially they might do a phase. They might do 20% of their final ambitions. But actually, that's just one of 5 phases. And so we need to work with the customers, go through the design, go through the in construction, and let's energize it, and let's get them onboarded. And once they're onboarded, then we can put them into the charge assurance platform. And this is really where it begins to get interesting. Because the charge assurance platform is two things. We've got software and service. It's a combination of the two. So we give our customers a software front end. Customers can log in. You can have a driver view, you can have a fleet manager view, you can have a site owner view, different views of the same data presented to them. They can download reports, they can see energy consumption, they can self-serve. The next stage, though, is the auto-healing, the monitoring. For a combination of auto-healing algorithms, we can automatically repair, restore, re-energize a significant number of faults automatically. So therefore, a fault arises, we can fix it before it becomes a critical issue for the end user. However, if that self-healing doesn't work, if that self-healing is unable to resolve the issue, then we've got our 24/7 support. They get notified within 20 minutes of the site of a problem being alerted. We can then try and contact the site and go, you've got a problem on charger 1. You're not using charger 10. Can you move your bus to charger 10? Yes, brilliant, right. Your operations for the next day are sorted. Or, if we need to, we can get an engineer on site within 4 hours. We can get engineers on site to repair or replace charging stations, resolve grid infrastructure issues. So that combination of self-healing, software, automation, and support and online on-the-ground SLAs, that enables us to hit the 99.5% SLA so that the customers can go through and deliver. Now, we've worked with a number of key customers. So we've had the privilege of working with Amazon. So Amazon is an aggressive, they are the most forward-thinking customer we've ever had, who are really on the cusp of cutting edge of driving out new features. They want to deliver, they've electrified a vast amount of their fleet already, but they're beginning to increase that, and we're working with them to deliver that. So we've got over 6,000 chargers, 9 countries, 120 depots, and yet across all of that, every year we continue to hit the 99.5% uptime. Now, it's not just last mile delivery companies, we've also worked with bus companies. So we've electrified one customer, Go Ahead. We've electrified a number of their London bus depots. We've electrified over 50% of London bus depots to date. And bus is interesting because suddenly they're significantly higher power than last mile delivery depots. You're no longer talking about AC chargers or 1 or 2 DC chargers. You're talking about 15, 30 DC chargers on site. So we did one load management example where we delivered 60 megawatts in one 12-hour period across 15 charging stations across 60 sessions. And you're managing this huge amount of power across a constrained supply to ensure that these buses can get out. And that's really what that's where our load management really kicks in. Because we can do dynamic scheduling, we can do time scheduling, we can optimize it against the grid, and we can project the site so that the site limits are never exceeded. And then we can allow that to feed into the route planning to ensure that the customers are able to deliver their vehicles the next day. So the other interesting thing, which is really beginning to come to the fore now, is that we're hitting total cost of ownership parity. So the electric trucks, the electric vehicles, we're now beginning to see that a long-term cost is exactly the same or cheaper than a diesel fleet. Now, you think that it's a bit counterintuitive because charging stations, they're expensive, grid upgrades, they're expensive, electric buses, they're expensive. But over a period of time, the total cost of ownership is actually lower than electric fleet. We're seeing anecdotal evidence from bus companies. They used to change brake discs on a bus every 2 to 3 months. Now they're changing it every 2 years. We're seeing that the buses are arriving, they're doing their routes 3 minutes shorter than it was previously because it's easier to accelerate, it's a smoother ride. And we're seeing customers, drivers come into the garage and go, I don't want to drive the diesel bus, I'm not driving that diesel bus, I want the electric bus. It's easier, it's smoother, it's nicer. So electric vehicles, they're just better and they're beginning to be cheaper. And this is really where the tipping point is now happening. Fleet finance managers are going, it just makes good business sense to go electric. And we're at the tipping point now within the industry to move this forward. And what we're now seeing, one of the things, the innovations we've been able to push through with some of our customers is, okay, they're really expensive, you haven't got any funding, how can we enable you to electrify? And so we've essentially created a number of, through our backers, different consumption models. So instead of paying for everything up front or in phase delivery, you pay a monthly subscription fee. You sign up for a 10, 15-year contract and you pay for over that period. And during that period, you get our charging as a service and we provide the capital, we install, we provide the service so that you provide a monthly subscription fee and then we provide this service so that you can enable your business. So where do we see moving forward? Well, I think we're beginning to hit our sweet spot of what our solution is. So we're designing and building, we've got our constructions, we can work with our partners to electrify their fleets. We've got our charge assurance platform where we can enable the 99% uptime. We're beginning to see different consumption models of like how you customers pay for these services. And then finally, we're beginning to see these sort of all come together in electric truck hubs. This is an interesting development as we begin to move away from depot charging to sort of depot to depot charging and then depot to hub and on the highway charging. So it's a really exciting domain. It's challenging, and there's lots of problems, but there's lots to be solved, and we're making good progress with our customers. And I still maintain that this domain is the most exciting engineering domain to be in at the moment, because you're covering everything from electrification, high power voltage, low power IoT, software as a service, finance models. The whole industry is perhaps the most exciting industry to be in. And that's why we're succeeding, because we're really...
It's been amazing to see the growth of your charging and what you have been doing and the profitability and everything that you've been doing on the fleet electrification and the fleet charging. But I have one personal question for you. What keeps you motivated after you've spent so many years in the e-mobility and the EV charging space?
It's a good question. I'm going to go back a couple of slides if that's all right. I want to go back to this diagram. So this is why it's interesting, okay? Because everything over here, that's evolving, that's challenging, that's constantly changing and improving. And like today, I had a conversation with Hubject about the differences between Dash 20 and Dash 2 1511A and the impact that's going to have on us as a CPO. How are we going to manage our customers? How are we going to manage our support team through that? So it's going to be a really interesting next few years around, okay, we've got the fundamentals, we know how to put a charger in the ground, but how we operate it, how do we make it cost effective, how do we improve the service, how do we answer our customers' problems? Because one of the problems, the key problem that our customers have, one of the key problems is how do you know which vehicle is plugged into which charging station? And you think, well, that's quite an easy question. But actually, the solution is so complex because you have to do a 1511A implementation, you need a plug and charge contract certificate, and then you need the whole ecosystem to deliver that one simple report for the customer. And you know that when you've delivered that solution, the customer will go, oh great, fine, thanks, and they'll work it out. But actually, that's a really complex problem to solve, and it's those complex problems that I think are really interesting.
It's very intriguing to hear that the complexity is the one that motivates you, and that's what likes you, and that's one of the core principles and the values that we have built on AMPECO. So that we want to solve the complexity in the EV charging by providing our platform. So my next question for you is, what do you value the most working with AMPECO, and how our company has enabled the success of your charging over the years?
So AMPECO have been brilliant. I love working with the AMPECO team because they're specialists. So on this diagram, again, there's a lot of complexity, and we cannot master and be experts in everything. So therefore, you have to build an ecosystem of different partners, different sort of customers who can help you solve individual things. So the complexity of OCPP, that was where we first started with AMPECO. And then now over the years, I've worked with them to deliver a 1511A-2 solution, OCPP 2.0, and to begin to understand how we can bring that technology, A, make it work, and then B, bring it into our ecosystem to make it useful for our customers. So it's the expertise of the industry and having a partner who's engaged at the forefront of solving problems and keen to work with us to solve complex problems. So I think that's really the value that AMPECO have brought to us over the years.
That truly resonates with our ecosystem view, and later on the stage you'll hear the AMPECO ecosystem vision that will be presented by our colleagues, because we truly believe that we need to develop the foundations, the core, that the charge point operators can build their differentiation on top. And it's amazing to see from your presentation what you guys have been built on top of the platform. So one last question, future looking. So what are your predictions and what are the trends in the fleet electrification and the fleet charging in the next 3-5 years from your point of view, and what is your charging doing in order to address them?
Great question. So the interface between the vehicle and the charging station, it's a cable, and across that cable flows electrons, and it's that flow of electrons that powers the vehicle. But the control of that electron, when does that electron flow? How many flow? When do they flow? Who allows it to flow? Where does that come from? Does that come from renewables? Does that come from the grid? Does that come from an on-site battery? Is the authorization, plug and charge? Is it an app? Is it how do we ensure that the on-site renewables integrate cleanly with the charging stations? How do we ensure that the financial reporting is correct so that the customer knows that that charger was correctly authorized? So it's really that control of the electrons, that when do we start, how do you start, who do you start with? That's the evolving problem that we'll solve over the next 3-5 years. There's going to be greater emphasis on grid signals. There's going to be greater emphasis on vehicle to grid. There's going to be greater emphasis on 15.11.8. But fundamentally, it's going to be how do we start a session? When do we start it and by how much? And it's that evolution of that very, very core basic principle that will evolve over the next few years into something quite complex for us, but then hopefully something quite cost-effective and simple for the customer. And that's our challenge to solve.
Thanks a lot, Richard. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having you on the AMPECO stage.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
A round of applause for Richard Earl from your
Thank you very
charging.
much.